Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Millie's going to be late. And I have to ask you every time, do we have a quorum now?
Let's see, we've got,
One, two, three.
well, and we've got Ronnie, Millie's on the way, we got Dale's. Has anybody heard from Dale? Was that Dale walking in there? No, that's Gail, but it rhymes with Dale.
Wait, we started this.
So, Jane.
We have three people present.
Got Tim, got me. Yes, we absolutely have a quorum.
Jane.
Okay, Millie's going to be late.
And so you need a motion to excuse Millie because she'll be here shortly and I haven't heard from Dale.
I want a motion to excuse Millie.
Thank you.
I will make that motion to excuse Dawn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Can we start with
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes? Is Katrina sending to us?
back in late February? So these are the same draft minutes that everybody's
Already
had
sent.
for a while.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the February 17th.
Do I have a second?
Committee minutes. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, let's move on to the citizen comment period. Since we've all had this proposed budget, I feel sure that's what most of this is going to be about. We'll try to limit that to as close to 3 minutes as we can. Do we have any comments?
21, you go first.
I have no comment. No, I have no comment.
Okay,
Gail Dunham. I would suggest that we retire the mannequins in the main hall. They're not professional, they're dust collectors, and it just isn't professional when someone walks in the door. And I had sent an email to Mr. Sessoms, the board members. I said I was very happy to come in and pack up the mannequins and perhaps help clean up the main floor so that we could have more space to have more meetings there. It looks like that big case may have been moved a little bit, but I think we should use the space that we have. And I think that some of those things I think could probably be stored elsewhere. They already would know, but I did offer to do that. One of the things that I'd like to see as part of the budget is the breakdown for the employees. And Katrina had prepared this, but I think the one I have is, it says 213, 214, so it's a while ago. But it's a breakdown of the pay and benefits for each employee. And it would be good to have something like this for your work product and for the town council. And it breaks it down, their gross pay, full-time or part-time, pay per hour, hours per week, Social Security, 401k, the insurance, North Carolina retirement, and then so it breaks down with total benefits, and then a total, including their pay and benefits. And clearly some people take it on the health insurance and some don't. But I watched like a 2-hour debate on health care, and a document as simple as this might be a lot easier for you and the council when you talk about these benefits. And I have something else here for Katrina, and this really, I mean, this is meant to be. I just think it was a good way of doing things in the past. Katrina, here you go. Dana Luther did spreadsheets on capital projects, and the capital project would be broken down for Community Park, Phase 1 and Phase 2, ball fields. When it came time to figure out why the clubhouse was sinking and possibly which of the contractors were responsible, this is the kind of document that you could go to, because it showed which vendor got paid for what on what date. And I think these documents could be brought up to date. Possibly we have all kinds of things since Scott came, whether it's putting in for the community park, putting in the dam, but to have a working document like this for the long term. And people talk, well, what did it cost? And I think it is important. If somebody says how much did it cost or how much is it going to cost to maintain, this is the kind of document that we would like to have, and this is what a chief finance officer would do. So I just think documents, like we need documents, and like with Founder's Day, have something where it's broken down.
Okay, that's the 3 minutes. Thanks.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am, you have 3 minutes.
Won't take 3 minutes. Will we be allowed to ask questions about the proposed budget during the discussion, or do I need to ask the question now?
You need to ask a question now.
Okay. That's what I wanted to know. The planning salary is on this proposed budget for $53,000. And since the salary is higher than that, why is it $53,000?
Well, that's the short one. I'll go ahead and answer it.
Okay.
All right. Well, because this one was done before the planner was hired,
Okay.
and it'll be an adjustment that we'll make by the final proposed budget.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Old business, investment update. Jamie, do you have one?
Yes. Scott and I met with two folks from Newbridge Bank. Let's see, we have their cards right here. Jeff Chandler and
Branch manager,
Brian Wildman.
who's their wealth management person at Newbridge.
And we started out our conversation with our investment policy, which is that our main goals are safety, liquidity, and yield. And the North Carolina General Statute 15930. So they were well aware of what we can do and what we can't. Earlier that week, I had spoken with Julie Bennett from the Bank of North Carolina, and she had said the CDAR rate has gone up, very minor, but still gone up. It's at 0.5. Jeff and Ryan really didn't have a lot of options for us, really, that were real attractive. And they understand that we have such a strict collateralization policy mandated by the state that there's just not a lot of that banks can do for us. They mentioned several things that started to catch my attention. And as they continued to talk, they were like, well, this could be up to this percent or that percent. One was up to 9% and to 2024, which is a long time off, but the catch is that it's callable. So obviously, anytime the rates started sounding pretty good, there's an option of being called. So you know exactly, we're obviously not going to be in any better, I feel much better shape. There had been some suggestions about 10-year treasuries. We have those rates there. And obviously they're very safe investments. The problem is, the question I would have is there's a risk of rates going up. So if we committed 10 years to, I think it was like 2.75, I can double check exactly, 2.85, something like that. Then if rates were to go up in 2 years to 3%, then we would say, well, we've committed for 10 years. So, we'll just try to continue to monitor the situation and see what things we can bring to the town council as a suggestion. The Cedars $2.5 million that we have will mature at the end of June. And so I do believe we have a little bit better option, a little better rate. But for instance, the treasuries, 1 year was 0.45. Well, we can do that well with Cedars. 2 years was a little bit better. But anyway, so I don't think that after they spoke with us, Mr. Chandler and Mr. Wildman, I think that they really didn't have a lot of suggestions at this point.
They had reviewed our cash management and investment policy pretty thoroughly. They just a little backdrop there. They had the branch manager had contacted me and said, can we get together and talk about how we could improve your return? And I said, absolutely. That's what we've been. That's what we want to hear about. And when we met with them, and specifically after their wealth management advisor, it really looked at our policy. as Katrina said, he didn't have much in the way of suggestions there outside of investments that were callable.
Well, whether we all agree with it or not, I think we've all kind of voted and been on the conservative side as far as a 10-year investment's concerned.
You said something, Katrina, that said 2.8% for a 10-year, or somewhere right about that.
Right.
And I know you mentioned also that, we could lock in and then 2-3 years from now, it could go up. But I think that's like anything, though. I mean, like any investment, you could try to time it, and that's not, that never works. Market timing never works for anybody, generally speaking.
You can sell it too.
It's
But,
2.73 as of April 17th is the 10-year.
But I guess what I was going to say, if that's a number that would do better than what we're doing now, if there was a way for us to do something with some of it, not all of it, it's maybe a percentage of it or something that's just a thought. I think it's something to at least think about. I don't know how much, it just depends on, I don't have a number to throw at you. I just think it's not a bad idea to think about it. And any other suggestions?
Well, we've made quite a bit of. Dana used to run us a report about every 6 months or so, whenever I think about asking about how much money that we had actually made on our interest.
I did that since I've been here, and it's very depressing, honestly.
Zero times whatever.
It's very depressing, but certainly the 5-year CDs were good investments.
I mean, would that not be something to look at? I mean, as a possibility?
Well, let me mention this. Rather than just simply us relaying what they said, Newbridge offered to come and speak directly to the committee. If you would like to hear from them and hear a little bit more detail. We've pretty much been down that road with some others in the past, but I said, well, certainly bring that before you, and if you're interested in that, invite them to come in and ask them more detailed questions about it specifically.
I think based on what Katrina already had stated, that the information that she had received, based on what we're legally able to do, I don't know why we would do that, unless that's just a thought.
I want to just suggest maybe since we've had Dale and Millie come in, let's entertain a motion to admit Dale was here about 7:02 and Millie, we'll say 7.
I'll make that motion and your verbiage there.
I'll second it. In his verbiage.
All right.
I'll pay him Joe out of the way of this job.
Do we have any more comments? I mean, is that something that the committee wants to do?
I think it's worth a discussion, or just why not? I mean, somebody says we shouldn't. It's just good to hear why we shouldn't. I mean, we're not getting much interest now, and you commit to is it a 10-year? Is that correct, or 5 years?
Well, there's different options.
Yeah, that was just a suggestion.
Just a suggestion. I'm just saying,
We were talking specifically to them about
yeah, unless there's something that I don't know about, I mean, I don't see locking in at something to get more interest than what we're getting now. Am I missing something here?
I guess the problem is when you lock in, and as you could be sold, but some things cannot be, and it's just, are you locking in at such a low rate that you wonder later,
Well, like I said earlier, it's like kind of like, you try to time it. So that's not the best way to invest money. You try to market time. And I think, I know a lot of people can look at down the road, maybe 2, 3, 4 years from now, things will probably, wild guess, probably get a little better, but here and after 5 years, and it's still about the same. Depends who you ask.
Yeah.
And that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, we had 5-year CDs, and I'm not sure what they were paying, 5 or something like that.
around.
That probably didn't sound that great at the time, but it was obviously was a good choice. But to lock in 5 years at less than 1%.
Yeah.
Did we rule out like the Garcia Group and some of their investment channels or what they could do for us?
Well, we did because the amount we have to invest in terms of really the safekeeping account, we were kind of not at that threshold that we felt like.
I thought they said they could minimize that. They didn't have to be there.
They could, but actually, when we did talk to Winston-Salem, I have it in the notes, I've forgotten exactly, but we could not compete with the amounts that Winston-Salem had because they were not using it for their, you know.
Right. Well, they were much, yeah, they had, I was just saying,
But they didn't have the same statute requirements that we had because they were using it for different funds.
well, they also had funds similar hours too, that they were being used to the same company. I mean, all municipalities are pretty much set. They
Right,
just have a few different budget items that they have to hold money for that we don't.
exactly.
So I was just confused on that because, I mean, New Bridge Bank, I mean, that's not their forte. We've been beating this dead animal all the way down the street and kicking it across the curb and running back out the street and kicking some more. You know, we're not financial planners, and, you know, I realize everybody's kind of don't want to pay someone to do financial planning for us, but if we don't know what we're doing, then you pay people to do what they do best. You pay a CPA to do your taxes. You pay a plumber to work on your house. You pay a financial planner to wisely invest your money and help make the good choices, because we don't know all those things out there, what their options are, but locking up our money for 10 years just scares me to death. That's a long time.
Greg Pagan is a guy from Florida that someone had put me in touch with the School of Government, and he was coming through Greensboro from his way from Charlotte down to Chapel Hill for a conference, and he stopped in and visited with me one day last month. And he said, I'm just stopping by, I really have nothing to offer because he understands what we have, you know. And so when planners are telling me this, when financial planners that work with municipalities, he works, I believe it was Asheville, he works with Sarah Morganton, he says, I really don't have anything to offer to you right now. He cannot help us with CDs, he's not a North Carolina company, and I certainly wouldn't pursue this avenue because he is from Florida. But he's just someone that wanted to stop by and contact us. But anyway, he just sat down, he said, this is how much you have to invest. I said, yes, and he said, well, you know, really CDs are the best thing right now. That's the best thing going. And so I'm not a planner, definitely, but when someone like that tells me that, and I do think that he does have knowledge of, you know, Statute 15930, and when he's trying to obviously get our business, and he says, I really have nothing for you to offer, you know, we'll stay in touch. Maybe sometime that things will change.
And I've got the minutes.
What are we locking in?
Nothing.
We're not. Just to quickly bring you up to speed, we talked to New Bridge, the wealth management advisor came and met with us, and we discussed possibly 10-year treasuries. We discussed our options, and there wasn't really anything there attractive unless we wanted something that was callable. Now, I've got the minutes there. Everything's pretty well summarized in our last June minutes, and I've got them here in front of me. I can read you a little bit of that if you want to recap some of it, or it's up to you.
But I would certainly be open, you know, for anything. I'm not trying to say we don't need to just, you know, invest in this, and I know that I should be bringing things in front of you. I just think we're between a rock and a hard place, really.
There's not a whole lot to bring in front of it.
Right, but we want safety number one, and
I mean, I agree with Don. I mean, we need to talk about whatever we got to talk about, but I'm hesitant to invest something for 10 years at 2%.
Is that what it is?
Well, I think it was 2.27.
2.73.
15 years? My goodness.
Varies from day to day, too.
because the highest it ever got was back on this year, January 3rd, it was 3.01.
That's what I recommended.
What are we getting now? I mean, honestly, other than that CD that's going to expire, it's like 0.013. I'm being sarcastic.
No,
Was
it's
it
true.
Yeah, you're about right.
That's my sarcasm.
I was at the credit union the other day looking at the CD board, and I was like, I mean, you know, I just remember used to you looking at you see all these great rates. It was just like one number all the way down, like they won't offer anything. Nobody wants to.
And just to put it in perspective, though, just looking back at the minutes, like when we were talking about Garcia Hamilton, what they kind of threw out two scenarios to us last summer, and they said, you know, here's what we're kind of earning for municipalities if we're aggressive, and they were talking stocks and bonds. That was little bit less than 3.5%, but they were talking about less aggressive investment. I don't think any of you'd argue that that's not what our investment policy calls for. Less aggressive was about 1.5%. So, and that was last June, but that puts it in perspective.
I would, I'd like to just, the market's changed over the last year, Dow's up over 16,000. I mean, I think it's worth revisiting a couple of these and see what they can offer. I mean, I don't really know what Newbridge has to offer other than that. 10 years, but 10 years just sounds, can you get out of it with penalties, no penalties?
Well, certain things you could get out, certain things you couldn't. It was just
I'd like to know what you can and can't get out of it, what could be is.
10 was the shortest, huh?
No. That was just, someone had brought up the fact that we could do 10-year treasuries, so that's why we were discussing that.
Let me read one paragraph for you, just to kind of summarize the other conversation we had last year. You talked with Rick Carroll of BB&T Capital Markets funding in Charlotte, and talking about statute 15930 requires that securities invested by the town be held in a third-party safekeeping account, which is what I was referring to. And so there's a cost of establishing a safekeeping account at a third-party institution. And in this gentleman's opinion, he said until the rates on commercial paper, government agencies, and other allowable investments rise, there's no benefit of investing $5 to $7 million in these types of securities. And that's what I was talking about. We don't quite have, while we think we're pretty wealthy here, we don't have that large a pot to offset the fees associated with that safekeeping account. And he said earnings on these securities less the safekeeping fees would reduce the earnings to be in line with the interest rates on CDs. So we're back to talking about CDs. And so he said, in his opinion, it'd be beneficial to invest in securities in addition to CDs if a town had more than we do. Basically, if we had maybe 7 to 10 million, somewhere in that was available to invest. So we're kind of under that threshold to offset those safekeeping account fees. That's what we were told.
Now, how much do they want for a CD for 10 years anyway? How much do they want on a CD?
I haven't checked on a CD for 10 years because I just don't think that sounds.
Well, no, it's not, but I just thought maybe you knew how
I don't
much they
know.
want.
Yeah, I could certainly.
How much you put in there? No, I don't need you to waste your time doing that.
So I guess the big question come out of this discussion is, did you clearly say that you don't want to talk to Newbridge wealth management folks, or are we wasting our time with that, or do you want to?
I personally don't see, this is just me speaking on my behalf, I don't see the need to, because from what Katrina just explained, it seemed like there's not a whole lot of information that we would learn from that, because they basically kind of sort of said, what I got is there's not a whole lot they can do or that they recommend based on what we currently have. That's just my thought.
They'll certainly take our money. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Everybody that talks to us will work with you, but if it's really something that's really a good situation, I haven't heard it yet. But you had mentioned other wealth advisors, maybe.
I know we talked to several, and then everything just got kind of put on the back burner. We invested a couple million in that one CD, and that was it. So,
I wasn't here for the presentations, but it sounded like to me some of the presentations from the investors were not things that we could actually invest in.
No.
I think that kind of turned
That's correct.
That's what
away.
it was. Right.
And so we're kind of.
We're sort of stuck with just CDs, really, basically.
Isn't there, going back with what Dale said, we're beating a dead horse, but is there some amount of money that we could invest in a treasury, as an example, for 5 years or whatever? I'm just asking, instead of getting 0.03, and is there something we could just prop it up a little bit more? Is there?
Of course. I mean, let's see, right now the 5-year rate is 1.75, which is a lot better than what we have.
Is that for 5 years?
That's 5 years.
5 years.
The
3-year rate is 0.91. I guess it's.
I mean, you go 5 years out and you take is there a minimum amount of money?
But like just for instance, the 1-year rate for treasuries is 0.11. So that kind of tells me something that we can do a CD for 0.5. Is what they're telling CDARS is now, so I'm just thinking,
It's actually moving up a little bit.
yeah, so,
But
and we can certainly get some rates, and I can get some
So you're
CD
saying a
rates.
treasury one is 1.1 for 1 year?
0.11,
Oh, 0.11.
0.11.
I mean, for us to lock in 5 years, I personally don't think that's just me, think it's a huge burden on us, depending on how much we invest in that. You know, if we took $1 million, I'm just coming to my mind, and put it in there, and somebody did the math for a 5-year, and then that's guaranteed income, and then in the meantime, if things change, we can look at other investments as needed, and then move money accordingly.
So you're basically thinking you get at least a 1% benefit.
Or withdrawal penalty?
Mhm.
Is there an early withdrawal penalty on the 5-year-old?
Regular CDs, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, what about if we look at, what are the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4 year deals? So much money going into each one, so that we can, so that they're staggered.
Laddering, we can certainly do that.
And
And
do
I can
that.
come back to the next meeting with, CD rates or things like that, and, give you some
Yeah.
options.
I would think that I would like to see something like that more so than, think of one as 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that way they're coming out at different times, and we don't have to put as much into each one, so that we can stagger it and then they come due. That's what we did before when we had the good old 5% ones. We had those staggered.
Do we have the number, I mean, where are we right now as far as cash to invest? I mean, how much do we have, what do you need to set aside for budget-wise and then what do we have left that we could, I mean, I don't say the word play with, but what do we have that we can invest or stagger out?
Because we have a lot of obligations right now too.
well, what would you say? Closer to that's
So there's $5 million available that could be pulled out of where it is right now. And
Well, no, we have 2.5 of that
2.5.
already that will come
That's
due in
right.
June.
So basically, so we have
Yeah, because
2.5
we
million.
have
So all we have is
So that was
2.5 million? That's all we have?
No, we have like up towards 8 million, but.
Okay.
The 2.5 million comes back to us
But
in
we have 2.5 we only have 2.5 to invest?
June.
No, we have 2.5 that we have invested now.
That we
And
have
then
invested
We
now.
could
Okay,
invest
sorry.
another 2.5 million easily, so.
So 2.5 is
So
coming
we
due
have
in
2.5
June,
million
right?
that we can invest now.
Okay.
We've already got 2.5 million tied up in investments.
So right now, what do we have the 2.5 million tied up in?
In a
CD.
in CDs through CDARS, which are like, they go around and get different banks for under 250,000.
Okay.
The five,
And how much rate, what's the rate? we're getting?
0.3,
went through.
and now we know it's gone up to 0.5, which is
It's
pitiful.
about 0.5.
It's
so it's-
pitiful. But then if you see the
Right, okay.
treasuries are 0.11, I mean,
Yeah,
some of the agencies that they were telling us about, the numbers, like the federal home, it was like less than 1%, so I'm thinking, you can certainly go all day talking, but if 1% is a lot of money, but then it's not. If you can gain 1% by investing in 5 years, I'm not sure that's a good deal.
No.
You know what I mean?
right.
Because to me,
It's
just
actually-
personally, I
it's a
think it's kind of
negative return.
good to keep it fairly liquid, hoping the rates will go up. But then there again, you can say, but we're only making this, so I really don't know. I'm very open, to whatever the committee would like, and I'd be glad to come back with interest rates
Because
or
eventually the
whatever.
feds are gonna stop putting money in the market, because that's what's keeping things going right now.
Mhm.
They are gonna stop doing that eventually. And that's when you're gonna see some things start turning around. And it may make rates go back up. I don't doubt that.
And it could, and personally, you can get a higher rate, obviously, than you can for public money. I did call one bank last year, we were trying, they would not even give me a rate for public money because of the collateralization rules. They're like, we can't, we don't even want to really talk with you. So, anyway, I talked with Becky Julinski, she was with the School of Government, and because this was back when we were really concerned, what are we going to do? Maybe we are beating a dead horse, but we're revisiting what we had done almost a year ago now. And she just confirmed to me that we have to submit reports every 6 months showing what the municipalities have investments in. And she said basically towns our size, even with our amount of money, still do CDs. There's just not a lot of, there's not investment management groups within this town. So,
No, I've sort of ruled out the investment groups right now. We don't have enough to do that anyway.
and if the rates
So
went
now,
up,
you're right. So now I guess we just have to see if we're gonna put them in CDs, if we want to get more than the .03 that we're getting.
Well, maybe if the next meeting, if you can come back with some numbers based on a 5-year,
4, 3, and 2, 1.
I'm just thinking 5-year treasury, then a CD that you just mentioned, that you can put money in the years going forward. And so you have some kind of numbers there, and base it on an actual number though. I think that would help us all out. If we base it on, say what, here's my thought. If we just base it on the current $2.5 million, I'm just saying that's going to come out in June, or be ready available in June. If we just base it on that, and then we obviously we can just multiply that times 2, sort of, if everybody wants to go $5 million. And then we can just base it in and go with that with further discussion. It's just a thought.
Well,
It's reasonable.
and right, but not the whole $2.5 million going in one pot. See, we're talking about dividing it up. $1 million maybe, of 500,000, something like that, so that we're not putting it all in one.
And based on what Katrina brings back, we can see which tools
we want to use.
we can do that with.
Right, yeah.
and right now the $2.5 million that we have is to the Bank of North Carolina, but it's not sitting there. It's
Right,
around,
yeah,
it's
right,
split
I
up to 250,000.
Yeah, I remember that now.
That's, I think that's a good program actually, which the rates were higher. Okay, I'll be glad to do that.
Okay.
All right, is that it on the next item, the SRA financial status update? We admitted we're supposed to come up with something on that, and Scott also had something on it, I believe.
Well, I'll let you give the latest on your efforts on that.
Well, I gave up on them, but Valerie probably told you I just went on the website and picked one up.
Okay, the 990. Okay.
The 990. And I haven't had a chance to go through it thoroughly, but I have not seen where there's anything that's unusual or anything that sticks out on this. And it's basically very cut and dry. They have increased their revenue though over the years. Each year it's gone up 2 more. And so that at the present time, last year, their revenue was less than their expenses. But this year, and that was 2011, I'm talking about the years because their next one is not due. This one is their 2012. Their 2013 one evidently is not due until now because this one was submitted on May 13th, 2013. So, which is a little late. It was a little late coming. But they only have one thing. Their mission is one thing, and therefore all of their revenue is coming from that one thing, and their expenses is coming from that one thing. And I did not pull down their 2011 or their 2010. I figured I would do that, but I just today decided that I'd had enough, and so because I really had wanted them to give it to me as opposed to my pulling it down, but I went online and just pulled it down myself.
Millie, when you said, I'm trying to understand where you're coming from, you said you had enough, what do you mean as far as?
They were not very cooperative between me nor Scott.
And the big picture there is, and Dale, you can jump in if you can, or correct me.
I got a phone call said I was, never mind.
Never mind, yeah, they were, yeah.
Well, long story short, we had been trying to get in touch with Glenn Broadstreet, their treasurer, who's been there, long-time treasurer, at least for a year.
A year.
It was last year and this year, for a little while. And he's always been hard to reach for me. He's never returned my calls, but in the past. But what I was going to say is that they're having a changeover in their leadership, and it looks like their current president, Lynn, is about to be replaced. Am I still accurate on that?
And they get a new treasurer too.
I don't know the new guy, but I hear he's politically correct. He's cleaning house and putting people in he wants to put in.
Well,
I don't know how that.
we met, Tim, and I and Jeff, Parks and Rec manager, met, and there seemed to be in that meeting very much a willingness to share information. Is that what would be your assessment of
That's
that?
exactly what they said.
And
They said we would never have that problem again.
Okay.
and so
So
that
you're
was,
aware of the problem that we had?
And I think they're aware of the problem, because when we brought it up, we
That was
said,
when
you know,
all-
we came around the table and broke bread together and said, hey, you know, in the past, this is what it's been. They said they were aware of that, and going forward, they wanted to create a new
So the change in the guard is a good thing.
corner then. Yeah.
and that
I'd
was
like
about
to
a
put
month
you on that. I
ago.
don't know.
I don't know.
So how would you know if they're actually going to change? What would be the next time they would need to give the town of Summerfield something?
Well,
They've already done it for this for spring practice, spring ball. They've already done it.
Well,
So they do
so we
quarterly?
have. Let's jump back. Like we have all the roster. We have what we need from them in terms of field rentals
Yeah.
and that. But
and they came in bearing a check, which
right,
Jeff was really excited about, because Jeff said
because
we
we
don't have to chase them down.
I had to chase them,
Right.
and he didn't ask them one time, and they showed up with a check.
and so this meeting with the mayor and Jeff and myself and them was about a month ago roughly, and
It was the day of the last town council meeting.
yeah,
The day before the
at least
last town
3
council
weeks
meeting.
ago.
3 weeks ago, okay, and then Glenn gave me a call after that to say
So-
that he was gonna give me the 990.
So I reached out, once we met the incoming president, I reached out to him when I found out you were still having trouble getting in touch with Glenn. I reached out to Lynn, and she said the current president, passed along the incoming president's name to you, and I thought it was going to be smooth sailing, and I turned it over to you and the SRA, and I thought we'd be sitting here tonight and we would have had what we needed.
Well, I mean, here's my thing. If they've given you a roster, a true account, and they brought you a check, I think we are well out in front of where we used to be.
We're light years.
Light years.
Now, was he the same person that spoke at the council
He
meeting?
was.
Very Worsley.
Okay.
WORSLEY, I
I
think.
think I was known by someone, but I have not met him personally.
So how many years has it been since they've not been forthcoming? Have they always been this way?
Well, I can just tell you my experience. When I've been here not quite 2 years, and when I came in, it was a struggle getting. We weren't getting rosters when I came in. I don't know that we'd ever ask, in fairness, and we struggled chasing money down until really we've struggled until recently.
I think
But we started what we started doing was requiring rosters so we would know percentages and see exactly where everybody's coming from. And then since Jeff has been overseeing that, and it helped a lot when Lynn Devaney came in as the new president, which is the outgoing one now. And we've had a lot better communication. Things have been much better than they were, but still, we've never had a good connection with the treasurer, and this is really the first time we've asked for their financials in 2 years. Exactly 2 years ago is when they came to the town council and basically asked for some help because of what the SRA's expenses were, and that's when basically town council at the time reduced the rate of what they pay. And that's where they've been, kind of that holding pattern until
And that
now.
just about fits the way in which their 990 is going, because, as I said, their expenses were more than their revenue according to their 990. Except for last year, it was the opposite.
So that was, because that was what last year Rob Langston, and he said, yeah, we're in the, you know, we're hurting this year, we're in the hole. And then, of course, they turned everything into Lynn, so that must have helped. So, yeah, we can beat the past all that we want to. I think, like I said, with Jeff taking over, you know, and having baseball knowledge of how to run fields and tournaments, getting a handle on who has keys to what, where, and, you know, that cut out a lot of stuff. And then, like I said, with that being, I'm much more positive about the future
Well,
of this already.
they're talking about 300 ball players showing up to walk in the parade. They're going to do a hit, pitch, and run thing for Founders Day that they're going to sponsor. I think they're stepping up.
So, and bringing all this back around to, I think our interest financially is, at first, since the last meeting, when we first asked the SRA for their 990s, I expected, with the current relationship, that would have been an easy thing. I thought they were just going to hand them to us. And they said, we don't think that it's that should be a part of any of our rental fee decisions, and they said that they would not give them to us. Mm-hmm. And so that was what happened immediately after the last finance committee meeting, and to which I said, well, we wouldn't be asking, we'd not ask any group if there wasn't a request that we do something different, you know, something special rate-wise. And so then that was about the time we had the change coming in, and I thought, like I said, I thought we were going to get something. But the real question here is what the question I think to be asked about this budget with the SRA specifically is, does the town treat them any differently at all than any of the other park users, rental users at the athletic park? And so far, they're the group, they're our biggest user, but they're the group that we very much they've been favored in terms of rates. We don't charge them lights, which is a major factor, and we charge them a much lower rate. I don't think, part of that decision by town council 2 years ago was seemed to be from the minutes based on the high number of Summerfield kids that were playing in the SRA. And at the time, quick recap, they said, we don't know, we don't track it, but it's somewhere in the 60 to 70%, I think is what was said at the time, 65 or 70, somewhere in that range. And now, since we've been tracking it, it's somewhere in the 25 to 30% range, and they're adding a lot. So they have a lot of kids that are outside of Summerfield. So the question, I think, for the town is, do we treat them any differently than our second and third biggest users of the park that pay full rates? And do we treat them any differently with the rates, with the lights, because that's a major component.
Well, what are those dollar differences, can I ask? I mean, if I'm Joe Schmo team and he's SRA, what's my rate for renting the field with and without lights, and what's his rate with and without lights?
That's a good question for tonight.
You shouldn't treat them any differently because they've not been honest and they've not been forthcoming, so they should be paying exactly the same as any other person coming to rent. I think that's just my opinion. They've not been honest or forthcoming, so you should pay them. You should make them pay the going rate.
I think the stigma, some observation attached to this is because it says Summerfield Recreation Association.
Yes.
And I think that stigma is attached to it in a sense to, well, it's for the town of Summerfield, it is the town of Summerfield, and I think that comes with it, and it kind of makes you kind of, well, it's for the kids, and it is for all the kids, I agree. But I think that stigma, the name Summerfield on there makes everybody think, well, we got to do something extra because it is our town. Yeah. And I think that's what we deal with at the same time.
So right now, the baseball players playing baseball, softball and baseball, under 30% are Summerfield residents.
Yeah, depending on whether it's
30%, but
spring or fall season.
Yeah, but you're talking about Summerfield,
right?
And then a broader conversation is kids that go to Northern,
right,
and kids that go to Northwest. There's still a lot of those kids that don't actually live in Summerfield,
Oh,
but,
yeah, you can basically the 150
Yeah.
corridor.
but they, you know, but they were honest. I mean, they said they had some that come down from Madison, Maryland, just because
I mean,
our program's good, we have a
I
good
would say
program.
from my, 7 years of experience, I mean, we have one of the best baseball programs.
And that's
Around
right.
town, and kids come because they want to play this competition. We've got good coaches, good parents that participate. I mean, you can't go out there and not see the place packed with parents. So it's a good program, and that we attract kids from all over because they want to play ball here. So, I mean, I get that. So I just don't know the difference. I've never seen the fee schedule, so I have no clue
I
what.
mean, I'm not saying there's not good people, wonderful
Oh,
children. I mean, I have children, I love the ballpark. I'm saying, you know, let's
Well, I was
be
supposed to say,
honest
I
and
don't
step
know,
up and do
How
the
much of a
right
break
thing.
did we give? I mean, what is their fee and what?
It was considerable. It depends on if it's, because we're charging others in and out of town rates, but this, we're charging basically a flat $10 a head for anybody in the SRA. So basically, anybody coming from Madison, you know, we're charging $10 a head. And we've got, and then the other big thing is lights, because they're by far the biggest user of our lights at the park.
Right.
But we've not been charged the SRA for that. And so I think the thing that would be most helpful, if I jump back to last month's minutes, the motion was to review the fee schedules and determine the possible fee increases, or look at fee increases for the parks. And I think a question for directing me to know how to better propose something to council and then for their consideration is do you want to treat the SRA any differently on the rental rates themselves is one big question. And then the second question is, and do you want to do anything differently in reference to the lights? Now, the way other towns do it, some other towns, they will, I guess probably most other towns, is they're just going to have a flat in-town rate and out-of-town rate. And so they're going to charge different rates within the SRA based on where the kids are coming from.
But what they indicated was they didn't really want to do that. That they would rather, on average, the average rate be higher.
I mean,
Or
To
in
offset that.
to offset the out-of-town.
It's a lot easier bookkeeping, as you're pointing out.
well, I mean, here's the thing, you go towards Northern High School and you cross over the line, you leave Summerfield and you're one house over, we're charging this kid. I don't want to say, I don't want to distinguish children and say you live at AAA.
But what if they're coming from
$25.
Eaton? You know, what if they're driving all the way
What's
to
the
Eaton?
difference from Summerfield, but if not Summerfield? We're saying if you're are we going to distinguish the 150 corridor? We're going to go north-south? We're going to say you came from...
As far as looking at the way we've been looking at the percentages and calculating it, we use the zip code, the Summerfield zip code for that, and factor in, there's some of those post office addresses that are in Yankton County, but I mean,
What are we currently charging?
That's what I was trying to get. What's
What
their
are we
fee?
currently charging other groups?
I don't know what their discount
As
is. Like,
opposed to,
is it,
because you're not doing them per head, right?
Right, they're not per head.
Okay, so
In
what
town
do we
is
charge them?
$15 an hour with $10 an hour for lights. Out of town is $25 an hour with so $10 an hour for lights is the same, whether you're in town or out of town.
and that's based on the team claiming they're in town, the coach claiming he's in or out? I mean, how do you determine that? If I'm coaching a team, and I call you and say I want to rent the baseball fields Thursday night for 3 hours, bring my team in, and you ask me, are you in town or out of town? I'm
it's based on the rosters.
rosters.
Okay, so they have to
Oh,
do
but
the
if
roster.
I'm calling just a practice, I got to give you my roster of players who are practicing, because you rent the fields to just by the hour. So
Yeah,
I
but
call you and
once
say,
our-
Dale Perry,
They're so full. They're so full that
Right.
we're renting. Basically, we're not renting that sporadically.
I'm
kind of thing. So we've got to.
I mean, if
handle on
Tim and I
a
want
few
to put
teams,
together an adult
please.
baseball team and say we want to go rent the field Thursday night, and I live in Colfax and he lives in Summerfield, I will say, well, we're from Summerfield.
Then if you call up, Jeff's going to say, "I'm sorry, we've got everything scheduled and there's no more room for you."
I really get that. You know what I'm not getting at is, so if I bring in and I just want to get a group of 10 guys together to go out and play baseball and rent the field, I'm not an organization. I just say I want to rent the baseball field for 2 hours Thursday night. We got a bunch of old geezers want to go hit the ball around. I gotta send you a list of every guy who's gonna play baseball that night, and you're gonna charge me according to the zip code in which you live in, or are you just gonna say, hey Dale, it's $35 for the night, you guys get to use the field for 2 hours? I'm lost here.
I think the rosters are just for the Summerfield, the SRA.
That's what I'm trying to get
Yeah,
at,
that's
because
what I'm trying to find out how we're doing this.
how are you doing that per?
Because it looks like we're doing one way and another. We're doing something by
Well, we
the
are
hour,
because
and
of
then
the per
we're
head.
doing the other per head. So if we're looking at this fee situation, then we have to decide how we want to do the fees. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
So if
I'm
we-
just confused. So Summerfield Rec is per head,
And maybe
And
also
then
by a
the
maximum
other
amount of
teams
people.
are per hour.
Per hour, yeah.
Okay. See, you see what I was getting
But
at?
Yeah.
what I'm thinking is that,
I'm not gonna, you know, I
You're gonna figure out apples to apples.
I want to, they want to rent the field for 2 hours, $60, okay. Oh, by the way, we need a list of all your players.
but
And
They're all from Summerfield.
and then the lights.
And the lights.
Yeah.
And the
Definitely the lights.
And the lights are how, okay, the lights are how much an hour?
$10 an hour.
$10 an hour for
Whether
the
you're
lights.
in or out of town.
In or out of
That's
town.
by
Okay,
each.
and then the other is by the hour. Then on the other hand, we're doing the SRA by the head. Somehow, one of these, the SRA.
But at a discounted rate. Keep that in mind now.
I know.
And no lights.
But.
And they have no
Right,
lights,
I
at a
know.
discounted rate,
I
so
know.
we're still getting a good deal.
It depends. It depends, because if you're doing one by the hour and you're doing the other by the head, then we got to figure out how much money we're actually getting from each group then, as to what that would come out to as an equivalent. And it's, and because we got to make certain that we're not losing money either.
I guess my
So
question
to
is,
speak.
like what you said, if Jeff was to sit down and figure out the number of hours that they're gonna use for fields, what would that cost, what revenue, what would that cost SRA versus what we're collecting from them based on
Based
just the
on
number
that.
heads? I mean, if he, because
I
he's
don't
got
have
to
the
get
number
We
for
have
you
to
yet,
figure
but
that out.
it's so much more.
I mean, because there's practice
Because-
time, the lights
Right,
are turned on.
because they're our
they got
biggest,
game
they're
time.
our biggest user.
Right, they
Right.
use 2 of the 3 fields,
Right.
Right.
pretty much.
And so most of that time too, the fields, the lights are on and we're paying the lights for it.
See, that's what I don't get. I mean, I'm torn because I'm
Right.
sort of part of it, and I coached so many years over there, and
Right.
and I enjoy it, and my kids have it, and it's growing, and it's a very huge popular
Yeah.
program.
It is, and-
but at
and-
the same time, you know,
I think,
Well, I mean, as a parent and
Yeah.
2 small children myself, we had to pay fees. I mean, and when you,
yeah,
people
85.
could, some people couldn't afford them. But if you
Right.
want your child to be in that T-ball and all that other stuff, you're
Yeah.
going to
What
you're
is
going
it,
to shoot out those
$85 a
fees.
kid, I think it was.
And then the uniforms and the equipment and the parents had to volunteer and kick in the refreshments every game. So, you know, it's big money.
I think it's, what we need to do
Is
is
it 150? We didn't get my name on
is
it.
have a more level field here.
right, that's exactly what
No
I'm trying
pun
to
intended
get to.
here. I know
Right,
that's what you're trying to
I'm trying to
get to.
get to it.
We need to
If he
have-
keep his mouth closed fast enough for me to get my little 2 cent in.
I'm sorry.
We need to have like
I'm sorry you're going.
one level of how we're going to charge people.
Right.
Now, if you take, I have nothing against Summerfield Recreation. I mean, I enjoyed it. I coached basketball. I was a sponsor, but, you know, that was some years ago. But the point of it is, if we have a standard rate, and if you just, for the sake of, just for this moment, take Summerfield off of Recreation Association, and just say, okay, here's what we got. We've got this many recreation associations. We have 10 of them, whatever you may have from different areas and want to use it. If you have one format or one form, come up with that, and then if for some reason you feel, or we think that maybe we should do something, I don't know, I'm just saying this for some people thinking maybe we need to just do a little bit of something. You know, don't knock it down too much, but probably the best thing to do is leave it all the same, because you have other associations that have the same kids, you know, they need help. This person needs help. And they may be the biggest user too. And, you know, that hurts, I guess, if we're not charging the proper fees as far as, I'm not going to say costing the taxpayers, but it is, but we also want to be a partner at the same time, as we know people, we know neighbors, our kids and all that. We got to balance it. We got to have one form and say, okay, here's the rates. here's how much you charge for lights. Who are you with? It don't matter. Just here's what the rates are. And I think that's what we need to go to.
Let me ask you one question. If they pulled out, what would that do to the bottom line? Because, I mean, I did hear through
Increase it.
conversation that they had looked at other
Increase
places.
it because the demand is so much greater than the number of fields. We would fill it up with somebody that would be glad to pay
From
that
Oak Ridge.
rate.
So basically, if some of her rate called up, if we said, this is what we're charging, and they said, that's too high, and they said, we're gonna go rent fields from Northern High School, we would say, have a nice day, and we got.
Well, I don't know if we would say that and that would be our attitude.
But that's what I'm saying is,
But
could we
from
make-
a financial
You think we
standpoint,
could,
it would be filled up pretty quickly with somebody paying quite a bit more.
okay.
Because
That's-
it's being managed differently.
Yeah, I didn't wanna cut our hands off.
No,
But yeah,
no, I mean, but,
That's,
you know, no.
Well, I
Correct
think,
me if I'm wrong, I thought we were supposed to have all of this together, you were supposed to have all of this together tonight with the fee set up and everything.
I wasn't gonna have the fee schedule done tonight. I'm
Okay.
gonna have the fee schedule done before the whole budget is presented, but I hadn't heard, I wanted to hear from the 990s and this discussion tonight before I set the fee schedule.
well, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we,
I have some professional information about this 990, if that, and some of it I think might be helpful to you. I don't know.
No, I'm sorry, I can't, permit that at this time.
I will make a motion that we set one flat rate for everybody, whether it's a Summerfield Recreation or Oak Ridge Recreation or Scott's Recreation, whatever it may be. Let's have one form for the use of the fields, so it's even for, or so it's the same for each organization. I'll make that motion.
We have a motion on the table, do I hear a second? Any discussion? Okay, any discussion?
I'd still like to see what the fee breakdowns are.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
I'm not against what you're saying.
Right.
Let me amend
I
my,
don't have any dollar amounts.
I'd like to see that breakdown before we vote on it.
let me amend my motion with, I'll make an amendment to that motion. With the breakdown from Scott, with more information coming from Scott, so we can see what the bottom line would be. That may not have clarified it, but with additional information provided by Scott, and then we have more discussion related to that. Does that work?
At that point, you just about to make that motion when he does present the numbers.
Right. I'd say, I'd like to see the numbers. I don't know what that, I don't know what SRA pay is paying versus what it's on us.
Yeah,
I don't really
yeah,
have the
you'd want to see the
I would
numbers
just like
to
Have you
compare.
got that?
Well, I have some, I know what they've paid for
Okay,
the
what
past
have
year.
they paid?
For 2012-13 fiscal year, they paid $4,500, and so far this year, they paid $4,700. I do not have it broken out as far as how it would be if they paid hourly. I don't know that that would be something, Jeff,
Yeah, we
it
need
would
to-
take some doing,
We need
but
a
it would be done.
comparison. We need to be able to have a comparison of what we're talking about,
Instead of,
adding to their charge.
right.
Okay, so they paid 4,500, you say?
They paid $4,500 last
What
year.
year?
Last year.
The entire year.
For the entire
Two
year?
baseball seasons. Fall and
Okay.
spring ball.
And when we.
4,700 so far this year.
And what do we charge if we have another group in? What is the base price for them?
It's $25 out of town, $25 an hour out of town, $15 an hour in town, $10 for lights. No matter
Okay,
what.
and,
Which
which doesn't, so what, how much in, revenue did we get from out of town?
Well, we got a total this year so far of $21,000. $4,700 of that is SRA. But I don't, until we
But
know
they're
the
our
hours.
biggest user.
Yeah, until we know the hours.
Probably the most helpful thing, it sounds like, is if we took, say, our three biggest users,
Right.
and those second and third users are paying the same methodology, and we just say, hey, if we calculated all the hours we've got scheduled for SRA
That's
and included lights,
Right.
what would they
What
be
would-
paying?
that's
in comparison
exactly-
to these two.
That's
And that
exactly
gives
what
you
we
something
need. Yeah,
that gives you the three big
comparison.
ones right now.
Yeah, because see, right now, we're doing apples and oranges.
Right.
And
Right.
so we can't make a decision on that.
That's why I figured if Jeff has a baseball schedule, he knows what hours they're playing, and how many games a week they're playing, and how many practice hours a week they have. So just kind of get a general idea. Obviously time changes eliminates the lights for as you get closer.
Now, tell me guys, if we're only giving 40, as you said 4,700 or 47,000?
4,700.
4,700 for the baseball season, for the whole year,
That's
SRA.
That's year to date.
year to date?
Yeah.
They have
Okay,
another season in the fall.
okay, so on their
But that will be.
990, why is there so much more that's shown here?
Oh,
What other things do you do?
Well, you got to remember, they only use SAP for one of their leagues. The other T-ball, softball, those play over at Summerfield Elementary. So they have 4 fields over there going at all times. We only have 2 fields that they play on, which is a certain age group allowed to play over there.
Okay, so
because
is
it's-
this revenue that we're talking about, this
so that revenue
is coming
includes,
from each child, the $85 dues, is that what that
yeah,
is?
85, it depends, I'm not sure what it is now, but basically you have girls softball,
Mhm.
T-ball, the coach pitch and kid pitch, move on that, and then you also have some SRA basketball in the winter months. So that also includes basketball money in there
And
too.
cheerleading, they have
And
cheerleading.
cheerleading.
They do cheerleading now, kind of on that.
Okay, and so, and
So the revenue's coming from those different,
Oh,
and then of course they got expenses from, because they rent gyms, like I think they have to pay, I don't know if they pay the elementary school for their use of their fields. They know they rent the gym there. They've had to rent Northern Guilford gyms for basketball because that's where I coached all my games against him. So they do have other expenses throughout the season that have nothing to do with us in SAP.
Did SRA ever have a deal with Northern that they could use their fields or nothing?
I don't know about the baseball fields. I practiced over there some the last season that I was assistant coach. We used a couple of, but we used to elementary school fields with no lights, so we had to. It was kind of tough in the fall. But so I don't know. I mean, I've been out for a couple of years now because my son went travel ball only. But
I was
but yeah, they
thinking,
did.
if the SRA had some kind of a deal worked out with Northern where if they maintained the fields, they could use them at no cost. And
I know a couple of the teams, the travel ball teams, use their fields for free, and they clean up the football stadium after
Right.
football game and stuff. I know that. The Northern Knights baseball team does that. It's a travel team. I think what we get confused is you go by and you see all those kids over there playing. They're not in our budget
okay.
because they're paying their money and then they're playing on the T-ball field, so they don't go into our numbers over here because of the age discrepancy.
I think where my confusion was coming in as such, or my surprise, so to speak, because you had a 990 as opposed to a 990N or 990 EZ, is because of the, oh, sorry, okay. You have a 990, which is one where you're taking in, where your revenue is above a certain amount.
Okay.
Okay, and so I wanted to know what type of revenue, what type of things are they doing that they can take in that much revenue as opposed to an EZ, which is only 150,000. See, once you go up to a certain amount, you got to go to the.
Well, they have the kids. They've got the kids paying their fees, and then they try to get a sponsor for every team because we've all sponsored the team, and then on the expense side, they got all the referees and umpires and things like that.
Okay,
and
so they have all
facility
those,
bills, right?
those.
Because every game's got a couple of
salaries
baseball.
that-
Every
okay.
baseball game's got 2 refs.
Okay,
basketball
so
teams
they're
have
trying,
refs.
so it would be for the referees and things, and any transportation that you're talking
I
about.
think there's a
No
transportation.
transportation. Okay.
moving right along, does Don need to withdraw his,
Well, here's the challenge. I've got, I need to have this fee schedule worked out and part of we don't have a regular May meeting scheduled as part of this process, so in late May, we're gonna have our presentation of the budget. With what I have heard from you so far and what I've heard from council talking to them individually, there is a leaning toward charging them the same and having one rate schedule, period. And that's, I'm needing some direction on how to draft the fee schedule. And that's what I'm leaning toward doing because that's what I'm hearing mostly from everybody. Now, I can get you that information quickly in the next couple of days and then hear back from you individually if it changes your mind about how we approach this. What really I was hoping for, like if you had a recommendation tonight and some direction, I'd have a little bit more to go on, and it sounds like you really want more information now for a good comparison of those.
I think we need to be able to compare, you know, and I don't have real hard feelings either way. I'm not sure that charging them exactly what we're charging everybody else is something that I have said, because, you know, I think we need to look at what they're paying now versus what they would be paying on the same schedule with everybody else. And if it's substantially more, then, you know, let's show some mercy and say, hey, this year we're going to take you to this level. Next year you'll be up to this level.
Your gradual scale.
Yeah, I mean, we want to be a good partner.
Right.
And they're, you know, at a time when I think they're moving toward us,
Right.
just to smack them down and say, hey, no, you pay what everybody else pays. Because it does say Summerfield Recreation Association. And I don't have any leanings, you know, one way or another.
I agree. I mean, I could go along with that my own ways. Is that,
But, I mean, Scott may do the numbers and it come back and it's just a nominal difference. I don't think that's going to be the case.
It's not going to be nominal if you're trying
Yeah.
to get them.
But if it were nominal, then I would say, hey, let's go ahead and put them on the same playing field, no pun intended, with everybody else. But I think we're going to be looking at a substantial difference. And, you know, 2 years ago, we know they had a bad year. So instead of zapping them and...
Why don't we, you know, for guidance, like you just mentioned, if we do it on a graduated scale, say, this year it's going to be this, the next year it's going to be this, based on how the numbers come back. And so it's an even playing field, and let them get to that point, let them know it's coming, so this is what it's going to be in 3 years from now. The going rate will be the same as the others, and whatever, if they have a rate increase, you will have the same rate increase as the rest of them. I mean, that gives them time to go up the ladder a little bit.
Allows them to budget for.
And that's kind of what
Yeah,
I'm
they
saying.
can budget, and they are very much aware that they're looking at an increase.
And I said 3 years.
They both said that. Yeah,
Only as a thought.
they know of an increase.
I mean, I don't think we should, you know, get with a sledgehammer at one time.
So I'm okay with 3 year, or even a 2 year, whatever y'all want to do.
I'd just like to see what it would be.
I want to see the numbers.
I want to see the numbers.
Well, I would just love for it to move forward, because we can sit here and talk all night, and that's all we
Right,
can do.
yeah.
Well, it should be hard. I mean, each team has a certain number of practice hours, and each team has a certain number of games. So there's your hours, you know, figure the game, multiply those out times the number of teams. You know, now how you figure the lighting situation is different, because like I said, different nights, you can play later without lights.
Scott, I think that if you can get that to us and email it to us, and then we can email back to you, you know, within a
Okay.
few days after you get it
All
together.
right.
And that way
Basically,
you know where to go, so that you.
I can withdraw my motion, my original motion.
Right.
And I do that, I withdraw, and my amended motion, I withdraw it, that's however I have it. But based on what we've just given you, Scott,
So by our next meeting, are we gonna have this thing that's been going on for the last 10 or 20 years?
Well, I'm going to get you information, and I'm going to hear back from you individually, and I'm going to draft the fee schedule accordingly. After I hear back your responses, I'm going to draft the fee schedule, and then it's going to be presented as part of the overall final budget draft on May the 27th. Final May the 27th.
So we got time.
And then on June the 10th, the council is we're going to have our public hearing, and the council is going to consider the budget. And when we get down to May 27th, if council has different thoughts, or if you show up and have comments about what's been proposed, we'll take that into consideration. They will, and we'll go from there. But I think as long as I get you the information and I hear back from you, I want to have a feeling of which direction you want to go with it. And I've already got some direction from council on it, and talking to them individually. And I'm going to propose something based on what I've heard from all of you, and then let y'all battle it out.
This is my,
So the answer is yes.
I haven't been on here for that long, but I've heard of this before, and before. I think it's time to just nip it, do something with it, instead of just doing
All
it.
right.
Absolutely.
I just want
I've
to
been
say
preaching that
that
for about 3 years, haven't I?
in all your discussions, you haven't mentioned how much it costs to maintain those ball fields, how much it's costing the taxpayers.
Well, I think one thing we discussed is when the ballpark and all the parks were created, there was no revenue line ever. They weren't created to generate revenue.
That's right.
But what we're trying to do is just be fair to the consumers of the fields and treat everybody fairly on the usage of the fields. I don't think we can go ahead and...
It was not meant to be a revenue generating, a profit, I guess is what we
I think we're just trying to make sure that the consumers of the field are being all taken care of.
I'm not talking about profit. I'm just talking about the cost of maintenance as opposed to.
Now,
Well, that's so
I know that Michael Brandt told me one time it cost $70,000 to run the ball field per year, and that they were making $30,000 to $40,000 a year, or the revenue was between $30,000 and $40,000 a year that they were bringing in.
And we can include that we can
Of
include
course, that was
some
5 years
better
ago.
comparison numbers with the information we give you, just for perspective.
Okay.
So we'll get in an email.
We'll get an email.
Okay.
All right, so you're going to come up with something and we will close the lid on this whole. Well, let's move on to the,
And you know, can I request that all of us send our responses to all, reply to all, so that we all see what the other is saying?
Sure.
I don't want you to read.
I want to read what you have to say.
All right, we're ready for the budget discussion. Everybody should have a copy. The same thing. This draft that was presented, preliminary draft that was presented March 31st, and it had a cover letter. All of this is up on the screen. It's exactly what you have in your handout.
Okay.
And just hitting the highlights. I'll do that first, and then we'll go through it, and I'll answer any questions and just let you direct how much discussion you want to have about the draft at this point. Basically, what is being proposed is 1.352 million, and what we're talking about, if you compare that to last year's, it's considerably less because we had 1.2 million in capital projects this past year. And so really what you're looking at, and we'll put it side by side, but right now it's a little bit less than what the budget was 2 years ago. And as somebody pointed out, we've got some adjustments still to go. We've got some big ticket items to make in terms of, we're waiting on health insurance rates, comparing those. We still have several things that are lingering, and we'll touch on those as we go through the budget. What is being proposed, instead of 3.5 cents per hundred, is 2.75. So that's a 3/4 cent reduction is what is proposed at this time.
Quick question.
And yes,
How did you come at that number? Just curious.
the 2.7. Well, first we worked through all of the expenses and taking into consideration what we needed to appropriate that to balance the budget, what we need to appropriate from the fund balance. That is a number that worked within reason, that we felt like if we were to reduce the tax rate by that amount, is something that we wouldn't have to hopefully turn around in the very near future and go back up on. And so basically it's just back down to the basics of budgeting and looking at expenses and our revenues. And of course we have that difference is the appropriation. And there's been some movement even from last year with the budget, with the process and desire expressed a lot by the public and even from council at the time of trying to spend down that fund balance as opposed to keeping taxes at the same rate or raising taxes. And that's the proposal, 3/4 cent.
I see the needed appropriation from the from fund balance is 289,
Mhm.
570.
Right.
So if we went down 2 cents, how would it damage your thought process?
If you went down 2 cents to 1.5 cents, you would simply be spending down the fund balance. You'd be appropriating more, taking more that's in the fund balance right now to balance out those expenses of this current year, projected expenses. And so you'd be spending more of the fund balance. The question in my mind at that point is that sustainable in the near future without having to raise that?
And we still would get our share from the county because we still have a tax, a property
It
tax.
affects,
That's the way they do it.
we'll get to that. I'm going to talk round numbers and you can get a little more specific. Like the question, a fair question last year was, given our fund reserves, was what if we charge no tax? What would we give up in sales tax revenue? And last year it was somewhere around 107,000 roughly that we would forego if we just said tax-free, tax holiday this year, no taxes. And this year, with the reduction of 3/4 of a cent, you're still talking about roughly 26,000 or so that we would be giving up in sales tax revenue. So that's the price to cut the taxes. That's, if you can think of it, that's the price to pay that we give up. But to answer your question, at cutting it down to 1.5 cents, roughly, we would probably be losing, I'm guessing here without having that in front of me, somewhere around, what,
Right here.
65 maybe, thousand? I'm guessing just based on the,
So then you
Well,
can
well, lower
calculation.
it 3/4% load, changed your overall revenue less 100,000. It went
Yeah.
from 480 something to 361, I think.
And then you have to decide how many years you can keep going into.
Take $17 divided by that.
let me give you a number to mull over in your mind. 1 cent with our property valuation, which is 1.339, I think, in property valuation from mouse. Let's see, I got my notes here.
1.339 billion.
Right,
Right.
so we have, let's just say 1.3 billion in round numbers. With that valuation, 1 cent, if we raise taxes 1 cent, that gains us roughly $160,000, right, Katrina? So when you cut it, we cut it 3/4 of a cent. That's what, 120 less?
Plus whatever you do.
123,000 less, not counting the sales tax revenues there. And so kind of keep that number in your head when we're talking pennies. A penny is $160,000 roughly to the town if we added a penny or took away a penny.
Okay, I mean, I had to ask because I was curious, and then I would say it's a good, and I said this before, it's a good starting point to be able to keep them down low and go down a little bit less, and we're right now 2.75 compared to some of the other cities and stuff like that, and we are Summerfield. Because I know that our fund balances and stuff we've got in the month we have is doing well, and I know there's some capital projects coming, and I do understand that.
We're not doing that well, because remember now that we still, before, when we got all of this is when we were getting a return on our money, of our investment.
Doing very well.
Doing very well, and now we're not here.
When I say well, I mean we're doing okay is what I probably should say to
Well,
clarify.
just to put it in perspective, let's jump back 3 years ago or so. We were making, our investment income was approaching the income we were generating.
That's right.
In terms of our property tax. I think it was at the time for 12-13, I think it was our revenues were maybe 33% and our tax collection was about 33%, and then our revenue from investment earnings was roughly, I think, 28. So I mean, we were getting close. And see, that's just gone away. I mean, that's
Yeah.
down to almost nothing. And so there is a much heavier reliance on the property, the ad valorem property tax rate now. That said, we certainly have healthy reserves.
One last thing I would say is this, is the reason I just kind of ask my questions as I do, keeping in mind the taxpayers, especially with, that 3/4 of a penny will help some, don't get me wrong, and I know it's about revenue for the town, but then again, with so many people today, especially with the price of gas, it's getting close to $4 a gallon, getting awful close as of today. The health insurance premiums are skyrocketing, doubling and tripling in some businesses and people who've lost their insurance. So there is an impact just on the regular citizen on this too. It's not always about how much we can make sure we have. So, there's a balance there, and I understand that, but I think it's always good to take that in perspective, is to understand that you have, especially a lot of senior citizens who are living paycheck to paycheck, and just ordinary citizens who are just living, barely making it, but the gas is killing them, the cost of living is going up. So it's important that we really keep our taxes at the minimal that we can, based on the needs of the everyday things that citizens have to pay here in Summerfield. And that's kind of where I was going with that. That's what I want to say.
Would you like to just jump in and start looking at the detail, going through and asking questions? How do you want to approach it?
Just as quickly as you can.
Okay. What we calculate with the property tax rate there is, with the revenue, is we use a 98% collection rate, and that's based on how the county's reports have trended, our actual collection rates, how they've been trending. And let's see, just go through and so here's what we were talking about. When you talk about reducing taxes, these are the taxes. If you look right here, this section right here, local option sales, additional local sales, supplemental local sales, local government sales. These are the numbers we're talking about are affected based on where we set our rate at. So that's where we're losing. If we cut 3/4 of a cent, we basically forego that roughly 26,000 in round numbers at that rate. And that will change depending on what the rate ultimately ends up. And we looked at a lot of these distributions closely: ABC distribution, cable franchise, natural gas, telecommunications. These are affected by competition. Cable is losing out to internet-based services. I mean, there's a lot of things that we paid a lot of attention to with the reports that we got and the estimates we got in terms of those revenues. And we'll just go through, and do you want to just stop me when you see something you want to ask about? I don't want to
Does council get an increase in stipends then?
Yes, that's a good question. I am proposing this, and council can do what they will with it. But when you look at what our council averages in relation to other towns our size across the state, it's very low. And I'll just tell you round numbers here, and how I did it. We're in that population group as a state, 10,000 to 25,000 basically. And so we take I take a smaller sampling of about 10 to maybe 13 or so, roughly 13. And in that group, if you average council member salaries, like if you average, mayors tend to get paid more. The average is $72.91, almost $7,300. We pay $3,000. With council members, the average in that grouping is a little over $5,000, $5,026, and we pay $24 $100 on that. And so what I have proposed on that is a increase for both of those that would still not bring them in line, but let me see specifically here. We'd be talking about with the mayor's salary going to
4,800
to 4,800 instead of
3,000.
instead of 3,000.
So from $250 a month to $400 a month.
And then with council members going from $200 a month to $300 a month. And so that's a increase that I proposed. It was not an increase that council asked me for, and they may have other thoughts when we get to it, but I think it's my job to try to keep us somewhere in the line of averages when it comes to that, because I think in terms of future council members, that, you know, you just don't want that to be a detriment of somebody serving. And it's not a lot of money regardless what you do. If we were high, it's not a lot of money, but I think we ought to be somewhere in the neighborhood of the averages. And so that does include those stipend increases.
Well, my thought, nobody asked for it. I'm asking, I guess you're bringing it up for discussion, and I understand that. However, I think the importance of having it's just something in there for them is okay. But then if you increase it 40%, whatever, 50%, whatever they were getting before, or in that, you know, the whole purpose of running for office, in my opinion, is to do a service. And I think that's where everybody has run for, to serve their community.
Mm-hmm.
Then you start getting into areas where you get a new council, and maybe they want a little more increase, and before you know it, the thing that it starts moving up a little bit, a little more, and you know, then you it's all, you can't live off that. And I understand that, but it's a point where when you start raising those salaries, the stipends, you start a trend that can change depending on who's here, and I just, you know, personally speaking, you know, I just don't know why you're proposing it. But
Make a long story short, I agree with Don. You know how the stipends originally started, don't you? The council served for many years and never got a plug nickel until I made the motion to give them something every month.
Good for you.
But that one, I mean, you know, never mind. I disagree with him.
When was the last time it was increased?
I'm gonna have a black mark against me now, I guess.
When was the last time it was increased?
They did.
I don't know. Without looking back several years, it was before.
I don't think it's ever been
Yes,
increased.
that's not very increased.
It's
Once it
been
was
a-
started, it's
So let me just quickly tell you the catalyst. I get from the League of Municipalities, I requested a salary survey so that to look at our employees, to know that our employees are being paid in line with the averages for towns our size, and it's part of it. It's part of the report, and so I'll look at it and I think. Personally, I don't know why we would want to be that below where other towns are. So I proposed it, and they can do what they want to do with it. It's so I don't make any apologies for that, and I won't when it comes time for present the full budget either.
Nobody's asking an apology. We just stated an opinion.
that's all I'm just saying. I disagree. That's all I'm saying.
Okay,
That's all.
all right.
It's okay to disagree.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying.
What's our stipend?
All right, so moving right along, we've got, looking at revenues, we've got some of those fees you were asking about. We've got a breakdown of all that. Is there anything specifically that you want to look at within the revenue side? And you'll see that amount right there, that 289,357. That's what it's going to take to appropriate from the fund balance in order to balance the budget if we cut the rate. 3/4 cent. You want to jump into expenses? Okay, and there's the stipends increase that we were talking about, the town council stipends.
I just want it to be on record that I don't agree with that.
Okay.
Okay?
This is something you'd asked about, or council had asked about last year, and I heard some from the public too, breaking out the due subscription and service fees, so it'll be real clear for everybody. That's the North Carolina League of Municipalities, that's our COG, our Council of Governments, School Government Foundation dues, Piedmont Triad Partnership, Kids Vote in Guilford County. That's the reason for the change here. We just took that from last year. We've got it broken out this year individually. So this item will eventually disappear. This line item, you'll have it all broken down.
Scott, can I know you're going through this, and can I call for a discussion on the stipends?
Sure.
I mean, I would like to have a discussion pertaining to that, and instead of me being the only one saying that I disagree, but I would just like to have a discussion on that and leave the stipends as they were. That's my thought process, and I don't know if anybody else feels differently. And not against town officials whatsoever. Tim, you're a good man. I've got nothing against anybody. I just, my heart just says, people run for office, and then they start getting stipends and top of stipends, and the trend starts, and then you have people running for office for the wrong reasons, and that's the problem with our government today. But that's my point, and fitting with other discussion in here, I would,
Well, in the past, when this committee disagreed, of course, this committee may agree on that stipend, but when we disagreed on something, and we felt that strongly about it, 90% of the time, Michael Brandt took it out of the budget. He took it out of the proposal. And I don't think anybody that's on this town council or the mayor ran for office so they could make $1. None of them did, and I think every one of them will say that. At least I hope they will. And I don't agree with it either. And Millie, Dale, now's the time.
I don't agree with it. I agree with what you say. I think that you're increasing something. You're increasing it, and you're going to grow. You're going to grow this whole situation out of control. I mean, after a while, everything's going to get raised, and before you know it, it's just going to be out of control. So this is one of the things I think that you should really take into consideration. And instead of increasing, and I'm going to get off the topic, but instead of increasing our budget, I think our budget needs to decrease.
Our budget is decreasing.
Well,
It's lower, so far it's lower than it was 2 years ago. And
It's the lowest one in 3 years.
And now that may change to where it's right at, close, because we've still got some things hanging out there, and we're not much under it 2 years ago, but it's very much a decreasing budget right now.
But I agree with
this
that.
is an increasing item that was very deliberately created.
I agree with Dawn. I think that if you start increasing this, people aren't going to look at running for council or for an office and doing a service for the town. They're going to think, oh gosh, I can have a part-time job here. I can pick up some extra money. I mean,
I kind of disagree with that. I'm sorry, $2,400 a year.
Well,
No offense, but
for some people,
they
it'll
only
be
go to
a-
Starbucks for a month.
It doesn't.
Well,
I didn't even know we
I mean, for most people, no, but I'm just saying for some people, it may.
it's just a stepping stone. That's what I mean. It's a step.
Yeah, but the stone's been there for how long?
How long did you put it in?
It's been there, I don't know, 6, 7 years.
It hasn't.
Not that long.
This is Summerfield.
That's not what no, because it was.
Thank you,
Summerfield.
I've been on this
Well,
road.
it's a stepping. It's like a ladder. One step.
Why can't we just put it in
So
some?
that's just how I'm looking at it. We
It's
can.
there, it's there.
Well, we all have a difference of opinions, and we're all entitled to have that. And you asked our opinion, and
Yeah.
I gave you my opinion. So,
Well,
have your own
I
opinion.
would like to make. I'm full of emotions tonight, full of other stuff, but I'd like to make a motion that we remove the increase on the stipends.
There's a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All right, all in favor of removing, recommend to Scott that we remove the increase in the town council and mayor's stipend, let it be known. All opposed?
to vote on it.
Yeah, you,
No.
that you should be.
My opinion of it is, we're a small sector of the community. Let the town council bring up, let them bring it from the people of the Summerfield.
Exactly.
If the people of Summerfield think these people that do all this work need a little bit extra money, and we're not talking, we're breaking the bank.
Well, let's give Valerie a raise in. Let's do that. Valerie works as hard as anybody here. Let's give her and Katrina,
I'm just
the
saying.
rest of them a raise.
Well, we haven't gotten to them yet.
These are topics you put in front of the town council for that town council meeting, and because the whole budget gets reviewed, and if the town gets enough people up there saying, you don't need a raise, you don't need money, then they'll do the right thing on their own. So,
My motion, what, voted, was it 2?
We got a vote of 3-2.
One
What I would
abstain.
suggest, if this is proper, that you let the council know how the committee felt.
And that's all.
And let them make up, I mean, we're just a recommending body.
Well, just recommend.
Let them decide. Is that fair enough?
3-2.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
that's good, roll.
All right, so got the breakdown for you there again of those groups from last year. In administration, speaking of salaries, what has been proposed at this point is, and again, going back to the salary survey and looking at where our employees are in line, most of them are look, the majority are pretty well in line. There are a couple that are a fair amount out of line, and those are adjusted. Well, one of them is adjusted for within the salaries, and it's been requested to have a breakdown of what everybody makes, and we can certainly bring that to the meeting on the 27th, or you don't have I know we've got a recent one, but I don't know if we need to get into all of that or not. Just tell me what you want to look at. What I've got in there for most employees is the potential for up to a 4% merit increase. And that is, I'm not a fan of just straight across the board cost of living increases. We do annual performance evaluations, and I think those should be given on merit and looking at keeping them in line with kind of what the averages are for their position across the state. And that's the number that's in there for most employees.
What about cost of living? Plus cost of living?
No.
Okay, no
We didn't give cost of living increases. We haven't done that since I've been here. I think it should be based on performance. And
Okay, so that's up to 4%, right?
right, there is one position that's in particular that I have a larger increase in there. Right now, I have up to 6 for an adjustment for one employee to make that more in line. I'm not saying that that's the way it's going to work out, but I wanted in the budget to make an adjustment big enough there to get that person closer in line with the state averages.
Would that be for somebody we were just talking about here a second ago?
Yes.
Okay.
You see anything in administration you want to talk about?
Now, we see Affordable Health Care Act go into effect, Health Plus for the town.
Right now with the league, we're still getting final quotes on that. With the league, what is the projected increase so far with what we can tell from them?
Before, last year, it was $1,500 a month. This year, it's $1,700 a month.
Well, in terms of the percentage increase for this year.
Let me do my, I think think it
Okay.
was 9% maybe.
Who is administration?
Administration is myself and town clerk and
Appraiser?
and yes, exactly. So right now, that's one of the line items, if you look at health, vision, and dental care and administration. That's one of the ones that we're still, this line item here, looking at,
So you-
getting quotes on that still. And, what's that?
We're looking at the town meeting, so I
Town
guess
meeting,
that's not us.
We're going to tell me refreshments, I'm like, I haven't seen
Not us. I have a
this
question.
either. Not us.
The vehicle maintenance, it's like 13,967 last year, and this year you've got 3,500.
No, that's not last year.
Which
that's
number are you
year-to-date.
on?
Yeah, which
See,
one?
it says to date 320 of 14. Last year it was 4,000. This year it's
Proposed.
3,500.
Proposed.
Right, you looking here?
I'm looking at last year 13.
Well, that's what's been spent to
Spent so
date.
far?
Right,
Okay.
just to date, that's what's been spent on it. And you know, we're looking at
Reduction of $500.
we're looking at a 96 Ford F-150. And we just, you know, we want money there if we have to fix it.
And that's for license and tags and gas and everything's in this line item. It's not just repairs.
Is the $3,000 decrease in health, vision, and dental insurance under administration because somebody's not taking
That's correct.
that insurance?
Because there's a policy that if you're a full-time employee and don't take the town's healthcare coverage, you get $300 increase in your salary a month.
That's an allowance,
As
basically.
an allowance, and it's taxable, it's a bonus. If you're a part-time employee, it's based on hours, but in this particular case, it's $150 a month. And so that would not be in that line item, it's actually up in the salaries line item.
And just a, you know, quick look, if you're looking at these items in red here, the proposed versus current, that's a projected decrease or increase. And so that's an easy way to look down through there and get a ballpark idea.
Looks good. A lot of red.
It's only a few circles.
So jumping to finance, and in keeping with the question about who's in each one of those, that would be our finance officer in that position, and then we also have a note in there. Our tax collection contract, if you look down place for you for tax
Yeah.
collection there, that's our contract. That contract goes through 2016. And nothing really.
Tax collection contract?
Yeah, that's what we pay Guilford County to collect
Well,
our
I thought you were
taxes.
gonna-
So that,
okay. Because they pay another.
so Valerie's not taking your taxes here.
Okay.
We're not dealing with that here.
So we're paying somebody to take our money.
Yep.
Oh, that's that way.
Operates that way always.
Okay.
I just thought that-
That's the way it
And I've
works.
been with towns that collected their own. It's a very different
I
animal.
get it.
So, jumping ahead, nothing in legal services. We had projected 65,000 this year, which was down about 5,000 from the previous year. We think we can hold that at the 65 this year based on where we're at right now.
Quick question.
Yes.
Now, I know it's contract legal services. We've had Bill for how long now?
I'm sorry, where?
2005.
How long have we had the current legal services?
2005.
5? Has this rate's been the same, or they've increased over the years?
They haven't changed since I've been here, but I haven't gone back and looked at previous rates. That's a,
Have we ever?
Blaine might remember.
I had not been privy to it for a while. I don't know.
Have we
I
ever
don't think
Good
so.
question.
contracted or throw some bids out there, just out of curiosity, to find out if the services could be less expensive, or is that
Well,
doable? I'm
You
just
can
asking.
always,
I don't know.
let me just give you a quickie here. You've got the two positions that the town council are responsible for hiring and contracting with. There's my position and the town attorney's.
Right.
So I don't shop for the town attorney unless they direct me to. So that's a relationship between the town council and the attorney that they want to hire.
Well, I think this attorney's done a very good job. Our previous attorney had a lot to be desired. That's why he's somewhere else instead of here.
I'm not saying that he should be gone, I'm just asking a question if that was something that's checked on occasionally, if, you know, as far as the amount of money for the services, that's all I'm asking. Just wondering.
We are planning to do a review this year, which have been done.
At the meetings,
I don't
there's
know,
a review
yeah.
plan for May.
Snap it.
Yeah.
There's a review plan for May for the attorney.
Does this figure include the amount of hours he's putting into the development ordinance, or is this just totally?
The development ordinance is a separate $2,500, and that is billed to a different. That is not billed through their firm. That's billed directly through private Bill's private company. That's a separate bill from our professional fees.
But it's still a legal fee, isn't it?
But it's down in planning.
But it comes out, and it comes out of the
Contract.
development ordinance ultimately, right, Katrina?
Yes.
The development ordinance part, just like the contract for that draft, those draft
I don't
revisions,
think planning is legal.
Planning development ordinance.
right,
Okay, so that's actually to Bill's company?
right, right,
$2,500.
$2,500.
We've only paid $1,250 so far.
right. But that's where that comes from. It's separate.
Thank you.
With planning, this was a question about the planner that we hired that will be addressed that will be adjusted in salaries and wages there, and that'll be reflected in an upcoming one.
You hired a planner.
And then we've got in planning services, you can see there, planning services, the development ordinance is where we have the $25,000 this currently budgeted. It should be, so far we spent, well, it's probably up to 14 or something like that. Then we have no election this coming year.
And who's the planner? Is there a planner, town or contract?
The town has hired Julie Reed as the planner, full-time planner.
Where is the money for her contract and who's left it in this budget?
You talking about for the interim contract? That's
No,
coming out of
for
the
the-
planner.
The planner's contract with Infocus, is that reflected in this budget?
Well-
$9,000?
No, that will be a requested budget adjustment for that amount.
You're talking about hiring Julie Reed and the planning that's one person for $94,000 a year? That's
No,
what's that planning personnel.
no.
That is the planning personnel.
There's just
The bottom of
personnel.
page
Planning,
5.
salaries and wages.
In that
Go
is
to the
a-
bottom of
There's
page
a,
5.
in the unemployment compensation, there's a previous planner that we may have to pay out some unemployment to. The unemployment system is very strange in that they bill one time in October for the previous year.
Right,
And
if
it's a
it
part,
shows when it's
so
coming.
that's $9,400 of that.
But basically, you're talking about $85,000 line item to hire a planner. Full-time, she's gonna be here 5 days a week,
We've hired a full-time planner.
and that's the amount, $85,000.
Well, that's not the full amount. As she just explained, we've got,
Well, it's 94,000, say less 9,400, so.
well, there's the
That's basically
breakdown.
86,000 a
The-
year.
The salary, just to be real clear, the salary is $55,000. That's the higher than salary.
Yeah, but you throw out the
And then you
benefits, you
well,
got $85,000 or $86,000 a year for a cleaner, one person.
Any position has benefits like FICA, matching for retirement, medical benefits. There's, I guess you can assume, I don't know, I used to assume 25% for benefits. It's a little more than that, obviously, but the base salary is always quite a bit. You have a lot more benefits.
So it's all the perks are here.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. I mean, for any position, whether it's planner or anything, you're gonna have workers' comp, you're gonna have medical, you're gonna have life insurance, retirement matching, 401k matching. So, yeah, I mean,
When you posted openings though for a planner, we've had an opening for what, a year? Did people realize that, that's where the salary was gonna be? And I've had more applicants than people had realized the salary was gonna be that much higher.
We advertised a range up to 50, and after an extensive search, we felt like that's what we had to pay. I had to pay to get the most qualified planner.
What was the previous budgeted amount? Was it 50 or 53? Was that got to
49.5.
the salary line item went from 49.5 to 53. Now we're saying it's 55.
49.5. So budgeted was 49.5, so it's gone from 49.5 to that amount.
And we weren't paying
Okay.
any unemployment compensation at that time, and they changed it, didn't they? Did the
Well,
state
that's
change it?
a different thing. What was a big expense in planning was past employees that were still in the system that had got extended through the employment extensions that ended last June. Is that right? And so we were paying for past employees.
Okay.
And the change you're speaking of is just, we just have to put 1% of in a bucket up to 21,400, so it's a very small amount.
All right, with properties and buildings, just hit that first, that repairs, maintenance, and contracts. That's down considerably. That's alarms, pest control, elevator repairs, inspections, those kind of things.
This building's good now, right? The roof and everything's fixed on this.
Everything's good except for replacing the plexiglass. We're going to be painting the window seals. We got some rotten window seals and things we're going to do. But
But is Levy not done?
so this one out here has been repaired. We're still going to get another one back here. We don't have that one back, but this one lights that pretty well.
Is that the flag light?
No,
That light on the
separately.
flag is not on.
It's on. It's just weak. It was a Boy Scout project, and it probably needs just upgrading on the flags.
We need a man scout on it now.
So,
Make it stronger.
all right. So one of the other items that's outstanding is we have the RFP right now for our landscaping, bringing all that landscaping together and mowing, and that's one of the things that will change between now and the time of budget's proposed. We also have within properties and buildings. I'll have to explain this one to you. The one under construction services is $30,000. Quickly, right now this year we had budgeted $600,000 for property acquisition and improvements. Okay, that's not showing anywhere now because we're about a month out from closing on the loan for the Gordon property. So we'll be spending basically $399 for that. Then
How long are we out before closing on the property, did you say?
May 30th, it's a little bit, it's more than a month, but May 30th. So what we're going to do is we've got, out of that 600,000, we'll be buying the Gordon property. Then on the corner here, we're going to dismantle the flag building. The one we keep talking about is unsafe, and we're going to focus on this corner here with what we've got left in that 600,000 line. We've got plenty of money there to do what we need to with, but we've only got a month timetable to work. So we're not going to make the other improvements. We're not going to be able to get all this stuff done on the other acreage across the road. So this $30,000, and that could change a little bit, but right now that's what we've got in there to do the improvements on
Just that.
the northern tract, the acreage, basically. So we're trying to take care as much as we can within that month window on this corner. So that's what that 30 is just.
The 30,000 is just for this side, you say?
Right, right.
Now, when you say that, what do you mean to take care of?
We have a house over there, an old house that needs taken down.
Right.
We will probably end up with, don't know for sure, but maybe let's say we have 4 mobile homes that we salvage, and then when those are moved, we'll have to grade a little bit of that just so we can sow it and mow it in certain places, and so we've got some improvements still over there.
So it looks like just mainly that even get the land looking nice is what you.
Yeah, that's the main thing, and to take salvage the remaining trailers, the ones that get abandoned, and then taking the house down there.
Why is that the seller's responsibility to deliver the property in pristine condition?
Good question.
I mean,
Yeah, I thought they were.
Anytime we do land deals, if I buy 50 acres and there's an old oil tank out there, I'm gonna tell the seller, that's your.
Well, it was part of the negotiations at the
Negotiation.
time.
That we take care of the removal of any debris.
Yes, $1,500
That's all
per trailer.
per trailer.
So
removed.
somewhere in that neighborhood.
So
So,
just burn them for cheaper than that?
so that's
Control burn.
that's
Throw
Good
burn
idea.
them for
the
free.
big things in property and buildings. Jumping to
But you're saying that 30,000 is going to cover taking down the flag building and the demolition of the.
no. The flag building will come out of this year's budget because we're going to try to get that done in that last month of the fiscal year.
And then who gets to live in the White House? Are you
Still
going to rent
working
it
on
out and
that
make some money?
No, it's going to. Well, at first it's going to be empty, so we're working on that one.
Going to rent it out though, make some money?
That's left to be seen. We've got
That's
the
something
property.
in mind, it's that, you're just going to tell us.
It's not a conversation for tonight. Community resources. We've got Parks and Rec. These are the planned events, and that's a topic of conversation most likely with council. We'll get to that. See what everybody thinks on that one. With Parks and Rec, when you're looking at salaries and wages, personnel, who are we talking about with Parks and Rec? That's our Parks and Recreation manager, and that's our part-time parks attendant, or both.
Combined.
That's both of them in that. So
Scott, you didn't break this down under 5010403. You had the 30,000 for flag building, but then there's another 30,000 for property building capital outlay. So how do we account for?
That's just a total.
no, that's
Oh,
just
I'm
the
sorry.
total.
Okay, so the 56.
Yeah, that's the same. That's
okay,
just
the
the
56.
total.
26.
Right.
And outside of the parking lot light here, you think everything is done for this building?
Everything except for, well, that's not part of the repairs, but yeah, that light in the windows. So on the windows, we've got taking the plexiglass off, washing, painting, replacing a few rotten seals, and putting plexiglass back up. We got the quotes all lined up for that. We just got to get the
How
work
much
done.
is that?
We've got one quote so far on the painting and seal replacement. The plexiglass, 3 quotes.
10,000?
I've got them on my desk. No, I think somewhere around 5, 4, something around 5 is the lowest one, I think. We hadn't awarded it yet, that's why I don't know exactly, but it's somewhere around 5. And there's been a lot of research done on that one, on what to put up there. Okay, with under community resources, you see anything there specifically you want to ask about?
Fishing derby. We didn't have that last year, obviously.
We didn't, and we have it planned for January 28th.
June.
I'm sorry, June 28th.
Cold fishing.
Yeah,
How come the Christmas tree lighting is $4,000?
because you want that magnolia tree lit.
Okay.
And what that means really is we got aside from extra lights, we're going to put in some permanent electrical to do it. We're going to have to get it tree trimmed. We're going to have to get we have to decorate the thing to do it to get the lights on there the first time. So the first year is going to be the bear on that.
What is partnership events?
Summer cycle.
Mm-hmm.
What is it?
Summer cycle, recycle.
Tires and white appliances.
Okay. Good event.
And Park and Rec is Jeff and,
and Rick Biggs.
is Rick still 19 hours a week part-time?
Mm-hmm.
We have him in the
Well,
budget for 18 hours for 32.
18 is what we budget. We wish we had him for 40.
$19 times 18 hours a week.
18 hours for 32 weeks.
Okay.
Oh, good,
And
32 weeks. That makes more
underneath,
sense.
let's see.
So I'm sorry, but the salary and wages for Parks and Rec include both those people?
Right.
Can you not break that down in the budget so that we can see that it's two people?
Yes, you
But
could.
you don't break down the rest of the staff.
You'd have
That's
to do it.
different. This is part-time, full-time.
You'd have to do it across. I'd want to do it across the board if we broke them down.
Well, that might not be a bad idea.
It would probably be easier just to provide a separate page that listed everybody's breakdown instead of breaking it down there as new line items. Would that be easier?
Yeah, I prefer not to do it for
Yeah.
that.
That
Because
would
we
work.
do have full-time and part-time in that.
But for council, that might not be a bad idea. When they have their meeting, they can all see the breakdown of all the salaries and then be asking.
Yeah, this is the
Good
the
idea.
spreadsheet that I got. It's good.
Okay, and
This
if,
one I would-
if you keep going through, the big item here that's been the hot topic has been the trails. We've got $250,000 budgeted for that, and there's, that's a big one that we're going to have a realistic number only when we get through the RFQ process and have a real number there. So
Park and Rec, for maintenance, you've got, say, 110,000. Is that for the community park and the ball fields? Seems to me that was 130,000 and left out.
it's
It's on page 8 here.
okay. You're looking at which line item you're talking about.
Park and Rec operating expenses. That's all the contracts. How much does it cost to maintain the ball fields, the community park? Are they're not, it looks like they're not.
Yeah, SCP is broken out from SAP.
Right, and that's what SCD there is, the community park. So we break that down, we keep that separate from SAP, the athletic park.
Okay, community park is 40,000 to maintain, and the ball fields are, say, 110 to maintain,
No, 68 to maintain.
or 68 to
For a
maintain.
total of 109.
All right, Katrina, Scott, how about limiting your answers to the committee, and let's move on with this thing. We're gonna be here midnight.
All right, as we go through, did I miss anything for you that you want to ask about? Within community services, there's a public safety committee. The one that probably their request that deserves a little explanation. Do y'all know what the Knox Box program is? Some of you might. Y'all know what that is? It's a box at a resident's house or a business's house that holds the key so the fire department can get in. Like if Ronnie failed and called 911 so they wouldn't have to come and bust his door down. And it's really the idea is to people that might not can afford to buy something like that themselves is to have it. The public safety committee requested it. It's more a fire department thing in relation to who would actually use it. And so that request in there for $3,700 is actually for two things. It's for some of those boxes so they can give out to residents that may request them and may need them. And part of it is actually a similar kind of little safe box on the fire truck, to be mounted on the fire truck, to hold the keys to control the access to the Knox boxes. And so that's $1,200 of the request, and I'll put the full request in here. I realize that might be something you want the fire department to tell you more about, and the public safety committee specifically to request of town council ultimately. But I'm just telling you what it is. It's the keys.
So what's the criteria to get a box? I mean, is it your age,
It's kind of been at their discretion. There's not that many of them in town. The town, I think, has bought some in the past or paid some money toward them.
No, the fire department had them, and the last time we discussed increasing the number, they said they didn't need them because they weren't using that many. They didn't have that many requests, which is why I was really surprised to see $3,700 on this budget.
Well, they came out. It came out in the chief is on the public safety committee, and it came out a few months back when we first started talking about this maybe February or so. They had the request, maybe January, and they said they no longer had any, and they wished they had more to give some residents, and so we started talking about it, and that was the committee's primary request.
Is that a one-time deal, the $1,200 for the deal to go on the truck?
Well, it would be, they put one on each truck. There's some kind of movement within the fire world to wanting the trucks to be outfitted with the box to hold the key to control the access to the ones that are out there, because if you think about volunteers and fire department, if your mother has one at her house, maybe she's not comfortable even having it if she doesn't know the key's going to be closely guarded.
I assume then, I guess.
So it's kind of a security thing on that
I'm all
part.
about a fire safety thing. My dad was a fireman, so I'm good with that. My question is, I guess the fire department issues the boxes, and then they're liable for there's no liability on the town. So if the fire department, we give them the box on the truck, and they give a box to you, and someone gets into your house because of the box, they can't come back to the town. They got that. We're
right. It's just like it's a request because it's perceived as a public safety issue, and it came primarily through the fire department to the public safety, and with that representation on the committee. But it's two very distinct things: the keys to hand, the key boxes to give out, and it's roughly. I've got the number here somewhere. Somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 and some, $300 maybe a box.
per box.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive. $2 something, and so we're not talking about that $2,500 buying many boxes, and they didn't have real firm prices. They just knew kind of what they spent before. And if you want to know more of this, just Google Knox box, and it shows you all this stuff. But then the $1,200 is specifically for outfitting, putting the box on the truck itself. So imagine if they
One
got,
box on one truck or many
no,
boxes on
one
One
for
box
each.
per truck.
Per truck.
Let me give you.
When they say, when he says a box, it's a compartment, basically. I say, just visualize a little safe, I'm just saying, it's in your mind, and the keys go in that when they're on the truck. Now, the actual Knox box itself that goes on the house is different, but the keys
Yeah,
are
it's
in.
like the real estate thing.
Yeah, that's like that, but on the truck, it's just for accessibility, control, so nobody can get those keys, and that's what it's all about. They gotta have all the stuff in place now.
And I think it was 4 trucks at $300 each, so that's the $1,200.
Okay.
Summerfield Fire Department.
And it's my understanding, to answer Dale's question, that we're just paying for them, but the fire department
Yeah,
owns
we
them.
would
The town
not-
has nothing to do
We
with
wouldn't
them.
have anything to do with it. It
Right.
would just be, they get them and they distribute them at their discretion of need. There's not going to be many of them. And then they outfit their trucks so there's control over the keys to the ones that are out there. And I asked, I said, how many are out there now in the community? How many are being used? And was the answer about maybe 6?
Yeah,
I mean, it was a
somewhere.
tiny-
It wasn't-
I'm sorry, but I just replaced the whole window sash in my house for $72. I just seen you break my window and get in and we paid $200 to have a box in my house with a key floating around on a pickup on a fire truck. Which one I don't know. And that's my personal opinion is that it's I can see it.
And the
So
box on the house, how easy
if
is that to
3,700 of them bought a box for 250 people, I can see it. But 5 people gonna get a box and 4 trucks gonna get a box.
They also, I think, for businesses, there's fire alarms that go off, or just different things.
I don't have an alarm, but
I've just-
break a window. It's $50. I
Me-
got insurance.
Hey, they
I mean, I'll tell you,
claim.
I got a deductible, so I know I got to. But yeah, that's a.
I bet that deductible is more
I can
than
see there was a big worldwide panic for that.
Yeah, this is municipal money. Summerfield Fire Department goes outside of the Summerfield Municipal District. And I hope we're not going to be buying
Boxes.
Knox boxes for Rockingham County.
Well,
And we have some Summerfield residents that aren't covered by the Summerfield Fire Department that aren't going to be benefiting from this.
We've got one big item here, the same as it's been, 30,000 on Founder's Day. We'll have a much better feel for that about the time this is being considered, because with changing to the athletic park this year, there's a lot of different changes, and we'll have a good idea of what it costs about the time to consider this. But right now, we've kept 30,000 in there.
So that figure does not include staff time and all the other time that's spent on Founder's Day.
It
So
does
it's
not.
not a realistic figure.
It's not, but it's the same way we do any other event. I mean, we wouldn't break it down for music in the park, for instance.
Yeah, but
Because
Founder's Day
that's so
takes
much.
a tremendous amount of
Yes, it
staff
does.
time.
It does, and I've spent hours with Founder's Day just today,
Has it
and
always
so does
been
other
that way?
staff.
Yes.
No,
always been a-
no, Founder's Day used to be all volunteer.
Yeah, it's a lot more. It's frankly done very internally now because we don't have the same number of volunteers. And as I was explaining to council recently, is part of that is because we have more policies
Right.
surrounding Founder's Day and events, which dictates that more of that stuff has to be done in house.
To get
What is the
more-
biggest what is the biggest item on Founder's Day? The largest cost?
Rights. Cost rights.
So far, the breakdown in the budget, I wish I had Cheryl here tonight. Entertainment is a major one, but we're getting a lot of we're getting sponsorships this year. Shuttle buses, they're, somewhere in the neighborhood of
$4,800.
around between 4 to 5.
Shuttle buses?
For the shuttle buses this year.
Was that the little things that were running
got
around last
3.
year that?
No, we gotta remember,
These are
this year
great.
they got
We're talking
SAP,
about-
so they gotta
we're
get
talking
it
about
off
school
the
buses.
Yeah, but I mean, in the past, it's been 30,000.
Last year we spent about 20.
Okay.
But everybody will walk,
We got it
this year, we gotta
exactly.
get everybody across 220, and then I can let people walk across 220.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should stipend the volunteers or something.
I'll volunteer.
All right, so
I did my part.
no big changes under zoning board. real substantial there. Other than talking about training and education, there's a question about that. We're not wanting to do less training. We're actually wanting to do more of it. It's just the kind of training instead of trying to. It's unrealistic to send the zoning board and the board of adjustment very often off to a conference or something. So we're trying to get more in, like the school of government and that kind of thing. The recent training that we had.
Can we look at the Founder's Day? Last year, we had $20,000 spent, and the big items were the stage generator was $2,800, shuttle bus service, which was less last year than it will be this year, was $1,500, portable restrooms, over $1,000, mechanical bull and climbing wall, $2,800. Of course, sometimes we have sponsors. Tables and chairs for Happy Rents, $2,100. So those, and then we have officers, their pay, so.
Can the town not use our own generator? Don't we own a
I was going to
generator?
ask the same question, thank you.
Can we just haul that bad boy out?
We do.
Knock the dust off and crank it up?
Let it do some work.
We do. We've used it in the last years. That was specifically
It was
the one in conjunction
mobile stages.
with the stage that was kind of built in to that one. I think it was built in on the was the reason.
Now, the bathrooms won't be, the portable john won't be necessary this time.
Some
We'll have the thing at the
others.
ballpark.
And we decided today we're going to have them in the lot. We're going to put one in each lot, parking lot for citizens and for the volunteers that are going to be out there all day. So
I mean, are they still
that's
getting
not a
bathrooms
huge
up there?
we cutting back on the porta johns because we got the bathrooms at the park we can use.
Yeah.
So that's one of the benefits of having it there. Yeah. So
Did you say you pay for the rides also?
No, but we don't make any money on the rides.
No, I
That fee, but then
Pay a
people
fee.
have to pay.
I mean,
a
we
little bit
pay a
more.
fee for someone to come to sit
Local
there.
reservation.
We did pay for camel rides, $500.
just
The
that.
big rides, they come in, they sell the tickets.
Yeah, that's
They
what I
make all the
thought.
money.
Yeah.
Used to, PTA sold all the tickets and made all the money.
Mhm.
And then PTA
And youth council.
said they didn't want to do it no more.
So then we come down to our 1.352 million budget.
Now, what library are we planning?
I'm sorry.
Planning library, we're going back up.
Planning library, you may go get some books off to show you the kind of things we're talking about.
No, you don't go, I mean,
It's the occasional book we get on planning, let's say from the school of government or elsewhere, for not just staff, but for council can look at it, zoning board members, board of adjustment, that kind of thing. It's just a stash of books to.
Where is in focus in here? Because that's a big buck item.
Info, that's a good question that if you go back to code enforcement is where
Page 5.
we go to.
Okay, so maybe it's page 6.
I can't read it. I don't know.
I have said page 6. Zoning enforcement is 15.4.
Zoning enforcement, that
And then where's the code enforcement?
is good.
Okay, so in focus is zoning enforcement 15.4.
The increase,
And
the
are they also-
projected increase for in focus for code enforcement, when we did the percentages was 25, was considerable.
Okay,
It's a
but he was doing a
considerable.
bunch of other stuff too. What else is he doing?
The only thing that's in there for in focus for the coming year is, well, I'm sorry, Ron told me not.
15.4.
The evening, let's listen,
And how?
do we have, excuse me, ma'am, do we, is there anything you got, any questions on the budget?
Other than the $3,700 for boxes, and I'm a firefighter son, but I just don't see that as well spent money to anybody.
Well, I was in favor of that to begin with. Once y'all start talking about it.
Well, I mean, 4 people will get a box and 4 trucks get a box, and so we got 4 out of 10,000 people. They're going to be protected.
well, council can
I
decide.
tell you what, if those 4 people
Wanna make a motion?
need to pay for their window when it gets broken for the fire department to get in, that's $200.
And they'll probably break it anyway, because they probably can't find the
They'll probably
key.
break windows.
I mean, it's a fire for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Okay, would you agree to, I mean,
Well, then if they break the window, they might give the person inside a heart attack, but it's not, then they may die because they didn't have a lockbox.
excuse me a minute, would you agree to let, pass it on to the council the way that
I'd say pass that along, but that's a waste of money. I mean, if it was gonna benefit a lot of people, but $3,700 you back out truck is $2,500 and $200 a box.
8 boxes.
Okay.
And another thing, fire department does have about a 10-cent tax rate or better. Okay, since that's it, when's our next meeting, folks?
I'll tell you real quick.
I go on vacation the end
May
of May
19th?
every year.
Is that right?
Dale, please come to the council meeting.
Just have to phone everybody, do it real quick.
Well, Scott, you in? Well,
Come
Scott,
to
you
the
in?
council meeting and state exactly what you
Scott,
just
you
said.
in?
This, the next, I'm a fireman, son, my dad was
The
a firefighter
next
for
meeting is
32
May
years.
19th.
May the 19th.
The math on that, the math on that.
I think the fire
I get on
department
Scott with my friends.
Fire department's got
Everybody got that May the 19th?
May 19th, 8 o'clock.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor, meeting adjourned.